So I've been asked to speak about what we call the Imaging Research Warehouse, which is just entering a production phase right now. The idea for this was conceived about 5 or 6 years ago at the time that big data was just beginning to emerge as a topic that research community was interested in learning about and taking advantage of. So this is about the same time that genomics and proteomics were rapidly expanding. And in the Department of Radiology, I'm responsible for the PACS system, the Picture Archiving and Communications system that's used for clinical imaging. This is where all the digital x-rays are stored. And the thought was, what if we could build a mirror of that with protected health information, PHI removed, so that we would have hundreds of thousands of imaging exams, CTs, chest x-rays, ultrasounds, MRs, all available to our research community for easy research and exploration. And the thought was that this would be an improvement to the way people did classical clinical trials and would be useful in the era of big data. So let's start with the notion of classical clinical trials. A lot of research has been criticized historically because researchers often have difficulty constructing blinded, randomized controlled studies. So the thought here was a good way to help in constructing such a study would be give researchers imaging exams that have all PHI, all knowledge of who the patient is, removed. And in that fashion, they could use these images in randomized controlled studies. At the same time, the thought was to build this with links to the de-identified version of the Mount Sinai Clinical Data Warehouse, so that in fact the information, the imaging information, could be backtracked to the same patients, their records, as they've been de-identified in the data warehouse. This would build a very powerful research tool where one, again, would have hundreds of thousands of imaging exams available with clinical information tagged to it, yet there would be no exposure to the patients of their personal identity and their protected health information. So we had conceived of this idea, and the opportunity to get funding came from the CTSA program at Mount Sinai. And in the beginning of 2016, we were enabled to start the build. So the first part of doing this was, in fact, to examine all the images we collect at Mount Sinai and look for the places where there is protected health information and look to remove it. And we went modality by modality, exam by exam, and we have about 90 modalities on this campus alone, where we looked at samples of all the images that come off each modality, a modality meaning each individual CT scanner, each individual machine that does chest x-rays, or what's known as computed radiography. And we looked for where there was PHI, and we used an engine to remove the PHI, and we didn't go forward until we were convinced we had removed all the protected health information. In February of this year, we started the production mode, and now we have about 60,000 imaging exams, and on a daily basis, this increments by several hundred, close to 1,000 exams a day. With that said, there's a new opportunity that arises. Along the way, as we were building all this, artificial intelligence emerges as a real interest in the current healthcare research environment. Deep learning is something people talk about, and one of the early applications seems to be automated algorithms that can look at imaging exams and try to extract diagnoses from those as a supplement to the radiologist in this time frame. Some people believe it'll replace the radiologist. I'm not too cheerful about that thought, quite frankly, but I do believe for the next 5 to 10 years we will see rapid advances where artificial intelligence, deep learning will certainly supplement what I as a radiologist do every day and help provide faster and better diagnoses to the practicing radiologist. And the de-identified information we have in the Imaging Research Warehouse is very useful to train and develop these algorithms that will do that kind of post-processing. So there are many exciting opportunities that we already are aware of, and I just leave it to the imagination of the investigators for other ways in which they can use this data. It's meant to be a tool that's easily accessible to our research community, and even further, information that you can export with IRB approval to collaborative trials that are taking place outside of Mount Sinai in collaboration with other academic institutions.